Hello, and welcome to Reimagining Education, a podcast from Michigan International Prep School. I'm your host, Eric Van Houten, and joining me today is Mr. Charles Carver, Director of Program Advancement here at MIPS, and I'll probably refer to him as Charlie or Chuck the rest of this podcast, but it's good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Eric. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so that title doesn't cover it as it rarely does, right? But Charlie does a ton of stuff here, so much so that I have to look at it, right? So here's some things that Charlie does. He oversees the Howell Learning Lab, which will soon be a part of the Hive, right? You'll have that in Howell. He mentors his own full caseload of middle school and high school students, like I do. I'm a mentor. He does that as well. He works on and applies for state and federal grants. He handles several facets of state compliance and policies. He builds relationships with political leaders and legislators. He works with truancy officers across the entire state of Michigan, and he oversees the BEBS team, which we actually had a whole episode of the podcast on recently with Amanda Murray about what that is and what you guys do there. So that is a ton. But there's some special things that we're talking about today. So I'll start it this way and then I'll leave it to you, right? You can run with it. Okay. I want to know what school choice is and why that matters.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me and for the introduction. School choice is why you and I are sitting here today and why we have, I think, north of 1,300 students enrolled in our school right now, grades K through 12, all within the boundaries of our wonderful state. So with
time left to enroll.
Yeah, there you go. School choice is actually a relatively simple concept, but it's, there's a lot of history, and powers that be, so to speak, that fight against it, that want to make sure that things stay the way they are. And school choice simply means that parents and students have the choice to send their kids to their neighborhood district school, which is assigned to them by their address, which is probably how you and I and a lot of other people in our age range grew up and decided to go to their school. They can go to a brick and mortar traditional style charter school. They can go to an online virtual cyber school such as ours. You can homeschool. You can go to private school, parochial school. Really a lot of options out there for families. In the public school realm, part of that definition, I think, that I would add here in Michigan, it's the money follows the student. So it's I think that's a big differentiator when we talk about school choice, is that we're funding students, not institutions. Frankly, a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on school choice, and it's very much a prevalent issue in our country these days. And but I'm excited to talk about it. I'm clearly a proponent and looking to get more into it. And I think it's a wonderful thing for our school, our state, and our country.
Is that the center of the issue then, is the money, right? Or I know that's not what we care about most as a school, but school choice seems to be, contentious, right? There are different opinions. And is that the core of the issue of how the schools get funding?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big piece of it for families and for political folks and people in the media, things of that nature. So, the school choice movement, charter schools in particular, there's, people that would argue that we take away from the traditional public schools and things of that nature. And my stance on that is that, especially in the 21st century, pre-COVID, definitely during and post-COVID, I can't think of anything that isn't driven by choice or on demand, right?
Yeah.
Your groceries are on demand. Your music's on demand. Your religious services are now on demand. This was kind of that one industry, so to speak, where your address dictated where you went. And there's not many other things that you do as a family or as a parent where that's the case. And so school choice kind of takes a sledgehammer to that and says, if you want to go to your neighborhood school, more power to you, and that's great. But if you need something that works differently for your child, that's wonderful. And, sometimes you see in larger schools, and I'm not bashing larger schools, I think they serve a very appropriate need in our state. But when you're educating the masses, so to speak, you're trying to get students to fit into the model, whereas a school like MIPS, you're fitting the model to the student. And I think that's kind of the key differentiator, is that we are, although we're growing, but we're growing in staff and mentors and things like that, we will always remain, nimble enough to meet the needs of our students.
Yeah, I mean, that touches on it directly, but one thing that I was most interested in is, well, obviously MIPS is a charter school. We're an online charter school where anyone in the state of Michigan can go because there is school choice. Why are charter schools in general and MIPS particularly important and helpful for students?
Sure. It's a really good question. So, just to touch on it from a broad view, Michigan International Prep School, through the Department of Ed, is labeled as an alternative school. So we can serve students that are working towards a diploma up to age 22. Just to put out there as well, we're not a program that offers GEDs. That's not in our repertoire of services or anything like that. We are a diploma granting institution, as they call us. Yeah. So. And we start in kindergarten. So anybody ages 5 to 22 that is within the boundaries of Michigan is eligible to go to our school. Yeah. And so, on the older side of things, where we're really seeing that we're meeting a really interesting need is for students ages, really 17 to 22 that have maybe need to work full time. Because they're supporting their family, or in part supporting their family. Yeah. We have students in that age bracket that are responsible for siblings. Whether that's picking them up at the bus stop, making lunches, taking them to doctor's appointments, things like that. And obviously we have students in that bracket that have children of their own. And, when a student enrolls at MIPS, they're issued a laptop and a broadband, jetpack wireless device, and they have 24/7 access to their coursework. And so there's expectations on how they log in and how much they do and how much they communicate, and that's all accountable to us and to the state and things like that. But we have students that if they need to work from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. on a Sunday night, more power to them. And that's where
we have.
We have
a lot of those.
We have students that go here for that reason alone. Yeah. Right. I mean, we have students that work third shift in factories and things of that nature that need to have the schedule that meets their needs. So, in a traditional world that just doesn't exist, and so that's a really cool thing. Being in this world that, get to see hands-on with students and their families, is that they can make these schedules that make sense for them, which again, I would argue is a very 21st century skill. You see it not only here as an employee, but you're seeing it in other industries now and workforces, the ability to work remote, the ability to work from wherever you are, whenever you are, or whenever you're able to, I should say. It's a wonderful thing. And frankly, post-COVID, I don't see that changing a whole lot, you know? And I think that's a skill that sometimes I'm not sure we give ourselves enough credit for. It's kind of that underlying curriculum. We're teaching the students how to function in the 21st century workplace. It's not, I think, here at MIPS, it's, your workday isn't really over at 3 or 4 or 5. It's over when the work is done. Yeah. And that's, I think, translating to the kids, the students. So it's really neat to see that. Yeah.
And I think that's worth noting too. It's so important in the school of choice that's evident, that succeeds in what we do here at MIPS is I started about 6 months after COVID. I started in August of 2020. And part of the reason why I'm here and came on board is because MIPS enrollment basically doubled, right? When schools were going from local school to online with the same teachers and trying to use the same curriculum, and it wasn't working, students chose to go to a school that did know what they were doing and we were already online, right? That knew what they were doing. And now, a year and a half later after that, we're still growing for that same exact reason. So I want to talk a little bit more about MIPS in particular here then. And this is kind of just a your opinion thing.
Sure.
Why choose MIPS? Why, when we're presented, we fight at MIPS for school choice, right? Because not only is that how we get students, but we also believe that we are a better option than a lot of their other choices. So why are you here at MIPS, right? Like, why choose MIPS? Does that kind of make sense?
why am I personally here as an employee?
Just in general, right? Whatever.
Sure. There's a couple answers.
You chose MIPS and students choose MIPS.
Yes.
So why to either of those?
Sure. I think, to answer the student part first, there's a myriad of reasons. COVID contributed to that, as far as what you said about our instructional model and having some longevity and kind of knowing what we're doing in this new space. There are a lot of students these days, unfortunately, that, are dealing with severe amounts of anxiety, depression, things of that nature. And I think this environment, especially in a world for the last year and a half that's been isolating, has given them an outlet, has given them at least some people to interact with and talk to. And they know that they have a mentor that is there to care about them, check on them, make sure they're doing the right things, keeping their head above water, you name it. So I think students really appreciate that care, and families do too. The mentors are not only in constant communication with the students, but with mom, dad, grandma, the neighbor, the softball coach, whatever the case may be. It's really this interesting wraparound services of adults that care about you. And it's really cool. And I think that word is spreading and that message is spreading. I think also on the student side, and I've seen this just in years past and at different schools and things like that, where MIPS is really, unique and neat is, we give you your, set amount of classes at a time. We follow all those rules and everything. But if you are just in the groove today on U.S. history and you are in the zone and you want to focus on that, spend the day on U.S. history. Yeah. That's fine. Spanish will be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you might have to do a little bit more in Spanish tomorrow. But if you want to dig your heels in on U.S. history, go for it. That's what I love about this sort of thing is it's not, it's 2:13 and some arbitrary sound goes off and it's drop history, go to earth science, that sort of thing. We're not learning in 50-minute blocks. And that, I think that's really cool. And frankly, with the mentor piece, the communication piece, the 24/7 access piece, you have a great idea, on a Friday afternoon going home from school and you got to sit on it till Monday. And you'll either forget it or not be as passionate about it by Monday. And this way you can just pick up the phone and call your mentor, text your mentor, be like, hey, look, I want to do this, that, the other. So I just, again, back to that on-demand aspect of it, I think it's really cool because we are, training our children and citizens that's the way of the world now. And I think MIPS obviously reacts appropriately. We are in constant communication with these kids and I think that's a good thing. So personally, I've spent the vast majority of my career in the charter school realm. I'm just a huge proponent of it. I think it's really made a lot of difference in a lot of kids' lives and especially in a program such as this where we can serve an older clientele, so to speak, of students. We're helping students achieve diplomas where that door is probably closed in other settings. And once we can kind of explain to them what this looks like and how they can get through, legitimately and with a diploma and on to the next step of their lives, I think that's a great thing. And it's really fun to have those conversations with the high school students that, no doors are closed to them by graduating from here. They can go 2-year school, 4-year school, trade school. We have a relationship with the military. They can enlist. They can serve their country. So, the world is their oyster here, and it's just fun to be a small part of it. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. And I don't want to talk a ton too, but there are a couple things, sometimes sparks fly, right? And our second episode of this podcast, we talked about pathways, which includes the military and dual enrollment colleges, becoming a realtor through us. And our marketing guy titled that episode, Pathways, launching students into successful careers. And I think it was important to talk about this when we talk about school choice. It's because students can say, hey, I want to go to the military, or I want to be a realtor, or I want to graduate high school with my associate's degree. Families can talk about that. Debt-free, a free community college all throughout high school. But students and families can talk about that and choose to come to MIPS to shape their future to look like what they want it to look like. So that, I don't have an end goal to that, but that's something that's really important that I see in my students too. And
absolutely.
The other thing, and this is kind of how you started answering that question, and we plan and we have in the works a couple episodes on student mental health and reasons how we can come alongside students and families who are struggling, not just financially and with resources, but also emotionally. And just anecdotes from my own students, right, is I can tell you there are a huge percentage of students here at MIPS that are at MIPS because they feel safer. Or you mentioned anxiety or the loneliness that comes with COVID and things like that. I just read, I was on the phone with a family yesterday who their kid got mugged, right? They're bullied in school and then they got mugged, like their stuff stolen from them and threatened. Right? That student doesn't want to go back to that school.
Sure.
And oftentimes, if we look at whether it's economic or emotional disparity there, coming to MIPS isn't just safer for them, but if they're in that situation, it's often much more fruitful, or they become much more successful when they're in an environment like MIPS with a one-on-one relationship with a teacher. So that's a whole plug, but all things that you reminded me of why school choice is important and why you work as hard as you do in a lot of the whole list that I said there is all for the emotional, academic, and social well-being of these students. So I don't want to cut you off there. Is there anything with that you wanted to add to? Or
well, no, I think that's a really nice summary of what we're doing, and what our goal is. So, something else I just want to mention is one of the beautiful aspects of online learning and kind of some self-paced learning is, we have the mandated amount of courses that the students have to do every year set by our school board and the state and things of that nature. But if students are doing those 10 courses and doing them well, and they're still within the confines of that calendar school year, we can, through the relationship with the mentor and the teachers, maybe we look at an 11th course, a 12th course, a 13th course. And that's really, you could argue the mentor's the secret sauce. You could argue the time flexibility is the secret sauce. We got a lot of them.
Seasoning is a bunch of different things
there you
combined,
go.
right?
There you go. Yeah. But that's definitely one of them. The ability to really, I think, one of two things: work ahead, graduate early, or make up for lost time if you have gaps in your high school career, so to speak, that sort of thing. So, the students that need that flexibility, that want to graduate in 3.5 years and take reins of that, man, that's cool to watch. And just to kind of, still be the guide on the side and make sure they're doing the right things, but that they're doing the work and doing well and able to move on to the next phase of their life. I think the technology and perhaps COVID and things like that have really taught this generation of kids, I would argue they're very entrepreneurial, and they're ready to move on with their lives. And that is our mandate, is to make sure that not only they can, but they can with the requisite skills and the know-how and things like that. So I think that's neat for me to see and to be a very small part of.
Man, Charlie, you sound like the glue that holds everything together. I mean,
no, I don't know.
A couple episodes ago, we were talking about special education, and they were talking about that same thing of a student came in that didn't get any work done, and they did 2 years worth of classes in
possible.
1 year and caught up and graduated on time.
Well, think of the difference that makes for your family. I mean, if you're somebody that needs to go out and work full time, or if you're helping raise siblings so mom and dad can go to work, that sort of thing. I mean, it's huge. And there's probably no way for us to ever fully know or track it, but the economic ripple effect through neighborhoods and communities and individual families, I think is nothing to sneeze at. For sure. Yeah.
I love that. So, I mean, I have a really long list of things that I'm going to have to bring you back to talk about. But because we're talking about school choice and kind of what makes MIPS unique and the things that you do here, I want to go through this again, right? So we have overseeing a learning lab. You are a mentor. You have a bunch of students, state and federal grants. That's the whole thing, more funding and things that we can talk about there. State compliance, political leaders and legislators, truancy officers, and the Be Engaged, Be Successful program. All of that combined. You touch on all of that, and school choice means, we're hoping that, or we believe students can choose to come to our school because it may be the best option for them. So I'm going to put you on the spot. And this is my question for you. Of all the stuff that you do, what are you most excited about that you're involved in right now?
Wow. That's a good question. So let me answer this way while I think of the right way to answer your question. My favorite day of the year, bar none, is graduation. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
To see the look of accomplishment on the students' faces, on their parents' faces, the neighbor's face who shows up, that sort of thing. There's nothing that I think is cooler than that.
Yeah.
So in order to get there, now I will give the students the credit. They've done all the real work, right? They've done algebra 2 and physics and everything that kind of terrifies me these days.
Oh, those are the big ones. Yeah.
But there's some gratification in knowing that we got that grant that paid for their mentor, that helped, kind of hold their hand, so to speak, through the process. Or we built a really positive relationship with a state legislator who might've been on the fence about how we operate, just as far as our instructional program, things like that. And garnering their support was able to keep our school, open and thriving and able to have that student come through our doors and finish. So, kind of starting at graduation and working backwards, you can see a lot of those things come together to make sure that these students are still having that experience. And there's, I do find some gratification in that, but it's really just the all about the students and seeing them go on to the next phase of their lives is really, really fulfilling.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I love that. And that's the purpose of the school in general too, right? Yeah. So that's fun. I encourage everyone watching or listening, right, to go on our website or look at previous episodes and be like, Charlie has had a part in that somehow. Charlie does a little bit of everything, right?
I think too, just my personal opinion, there's a lot of people that, we are accountable to. Our students, our families, our staff, our school board, our authorizer, the state, you name it. And we do everything we can to make sure that everything we do is obviously appropriate and correct and the right thing for kids. And that's our driving force. Speaking about the graduation, Eric, there's a lot of different people out there in Michigan that look at our data and look at how we're running our program and how we treat students and things like that. And we're accountable to all of that. We're accountable to our families, to our students, to our school board, our authorizer, the state of Michigan, Joe and Jane taxpayer. We take all of that very seriously, as we should. My personal thing, there's a lot of those folks that I mentioned that have different data points that they'd like to judge us on and see if we're an effective program or not. One that there's a lot of things that are really important. Student retention, so to speak. And by retention, I mean coming back year to year, not being held back, but, building a program where students, are thriving and returning. But I think for me, a lot of it boils down to graduation rates. That's something I spend a lot of time kind of looking at, trying to analyze, who's graduating, how long they're taking, that sort of thing. And we're seeing some really good growth in a lot of our graduation rates and subcategories, things like that. So for our more adult, quote unquote, type learners, students that maybe came to us that were credit deficient, we're seeing huge gains in those graduation rates. Huge. Yeah. And mathematically speaking, they probably couldn't have graduated from their traditional school by the time they got to us. And that's not a knock on anybody. It's just the math of the situation. And that's where us being able to serve them up to age 22 is huge. Conversely, our dropout rates for those students are going down, believe it or not. So that's a wonderful thing. I try, something we see occasionally with students is they're very concerned that, maybe their graduation cohort's passed, meaning that basically their friends have graduated or are about to graduate from their traditional school. And I tell the students where this comes up all the time, because this is a driver of some anxiety when you're transitioning schools that late in the game. I say, look, what am I now? 36? I'm 36 years old. I don't think I've ever been asked, did you graduate high school? And I can guarantee nobody's ever asked me how old I was when I graduated high school.
Or how long it took you, right? No, if you got a high school diploma, it's not like, well, how long did it take you to get that diploma?
In the real world, nobody cares. It doesn't even come up. It's not, And I tell them, look, I can tell you how many years it took me to graduate college, but that's a whole different podcast. But so I think that's getting through. That's like, hey, once you're here, like, we got to have some urgency, but we're going to make sure you legitimately do the work and it's done well and you know what you need to know to go on. But it's an interesting conversation to have with some of those 17, 18, 19-year-olds where it's like, look, let's just one class at a time, two classes at a time. Let's chip away at this thing, and it's working. And we're seeing, again, the graduation rates going like this, dropouts are going down. And, that is one of the reasons why we exist. The word charter means we have a charter contract that we have to uphold. And one of the, mandates we've put in there is that we're going to see things through for students, all students, particularly students on the older side of things. So it's just really exciting to see that we're filling a huge need, and filling a void in our state where, it behooves all of us, whether you're, and not a huge fan of charter schools or school choice, that's your prerogative, but it behooves all of us as Michiganders for these kids to be educated, employable, and earning as high wages as they can. So I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody to argue that. Yeah. I'd hope.
No, I love that. And that's where we started too, right? We're a charter school. We are a nonprofit, right? Mm-hmm. No one does any of this to make money. Yeah. It's because we think that if you choose us for a lot of students, that program advancement, right, is going to go up. And we're seeing that work with graduation rates and retention rates. So I love that. Well, Charlie, if you've listened to our podcast, which I know you have, you're one of the MIPSers who listens and watches everyone, right? We end every single one with a win. Now, I know you know what that means, but just for you, if this is your first one, we end every episode of the podcast with something that we have seen that encourages us or gets us excited. It could be academic success. It could be you finally got in touch with a dad that hadn't been in the picture, or another staff member helped you out in an area that was really difficult and you're really thankful for someone. But do you have a win that you would be willing to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot that come to mind when you mentioned that list.
You get a lot more stories than some of us maybe too, of the amount of people that are from here to here.
As far as the staff goes, it's just a wonderful team environment, wonderful team atmosphere. And there's no personal agendas, which is really nice. Yeah. It is all about students and families. And no
one's here to make money.
That's a wonderful thing to be a part of. So, I really would say we're still, basking in the glow of graduation. I know it's a little bit in the rearview mirror now, but it really is my favorite day of the year. So to see a whole new class of students graduate, I think between the mid-year and June celebration, we saw 75 to 80 graduates this year, if I'm not mistaken. And that's huge. We're only 4 years old. In the scheme of charter schools and the scheme of education at large, we're a baby. We're in our infancy. And to be turning out that many students that are, prepared to go out into the real world and function and thrive and are already serving their country, or got a raise at their job, or now in a management position at the job they had while here. That's cool. That's what this is all about. So, seeing some of those students, particularly some of the ones I mentored, it's especially nice to see them, finish up and move on to the next phase of their life. But, we were at a meeting actually this morning, presenting to some people in my local area. I was with another MIPS staff member, and we were doing something semi-similar to this, just telling a group of folks about our program and what we do and who we serve and how we do it. And the
elevator pitch.
And one of the ladies there said, my son is a graduate and I have nothing but great things to say about these guys. He's doing well, is glad to have, this chapter of his life behind him and checked off successfully, and is a contributing adult. And that's, it's maybe not a way that most educators look at it, but kind of my personal thought in the back of my mind as far as what one of our mandates is to create taxpayers, right? I mean, that is essentially what we're here for at the end of the day. And it takes a lot of things to get there. And that's why we provide social emotional support and mentoring and things like that. And, functioning, successful, happy, well-adjusted adults, coming out of MIPS. And I think that's a really cool thing.
I love that. Well, that is all, to me as a mentor, to teachers, to parents, encouraging, right? That they get to be at a place that offers that and supports that. So, Charlie, I know that you are a busy guy. You are all the way here in East Michigan from Howell. It's a bit of a hike for you. But all that to say, thank you for being here. Oh, sure. You think I'm joking, but I'm not. You're going to be on this podcast a lot. But thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this, and I'll be back if you'll have me.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
If you're interested in enrollment, or you just want to get to know us and what we do a little bit better, head over to our website at miprepschool.org. That's miprepschool.org. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. We will talk to you soon.